This 1.20 snapshot is weird. Hello there, Ray here, and enjoy this video where I compile the weirdest stuff that we found during our live stream testing. Leave a like and let's get started. So normally with a pitcher plant, when breaking the block underneath, it just breaks and falls to the ground, kind of like we were seeing with the torch flower. I noticed if you would go ahead and plant a new pitcher plant and then come in here, grow it up, then break the block, now the pitcher plant will just float. So I went ahead and also put all the different new blocks into my organization here. This is where I organize all the blocks from the thinnest all the way to the tallest, so you can make some really unique ladders. And there's quite a few different places where you can use this stuff to kind of like align mobs and stuff. And here's the same thing where you get the thickest block all the way down to the thin blocks and then some like random blocks. And then here's the same thing. This is if you get pressed up from underneath, you can see it slowly gets taller and taller and taller and taller. One thing we noticed when it comes to the pitcher pods, we got this little root part, which actually makes a player stand up. And we also got these three, which are all the same. And it turns out the little root is actually the same height as stuff like the trapdoors, the small amethyst. But the bigger root is actually the same height as the large amethyst, which before that used to be the only thing that was this height in the game. So now we got two of them. You got some options. You also have a unique width, like if you get pressed up against this side of them, which is the same as all of these blocks, including this type of wall. What if the big pitcher plant has a little bit wider one, which actually makes it just as wide as all these things, including like the anvil. Using a trick where you can grow one of these up and remove the block underneath and they don't update, we can actually go underneath them and get a unique collision as well. This is because their little root not only collides going upwards, but it also goes slightly downwards to intersect with the farmland, which is shorter than a normal block. So technically the pitcher plant is actually partially inside of this block here. So it's actually taking up 3 blocks if you count the top piece as well. So when we put this into our little setup here, we can see it hangs slightly lower than a normal block because I'm colliding with it right now. There's actually very few blocks that are like this in the game. Another one is like the piston arm. If you go underneath of it, you can see I'm actually colliding with the little silver part of it. But if I place a block beside it, you can see that silver part is clearly down within inside of this block, even though the actual piston is up there. This also occurs when they open up like a shulker box. It actually will collide with entities that are below it, only when it's open. But the piston heads, you can rotate them a bunch of different directions so that it comes over to the block to the side as well. Although getting piston heads like this isn't normally possible in survival. Now this type of behavior is more common when it comes to like fences, because a normal block is like down here, and despite the fence actually being down there, you can end up standing on top of it. But you might remember I actually used both shulker boxes as well as piston heads as wither cages in the past. And in the technical Minecraft community, I'm known as the guru of wither cages, as I have designed dozens of stable wither cages throughout the years. I'll put the entire playlist in the description if you're curious in all the different ways you can contain withers. My most recent design is this one here, where we have the wither shooting its wither skulls, and they can actually get bounced off of this bubble column, so they never ever hit the chicken. This used a new mechanic that I discovered at the time, and I added it to my wither rose farm here, which made it really simple to make this wither cage. But instead, using like a piston head or a upside down shulker box that's opened up, we can always come in here and place in the new pitcher plant, and it can do the same thing. And I also combine this with my bubble column version. You can kind of see how simple this gets with the wither trying to walk out. He can't go up because the top of his head is colliding with the pitcher plant, and he can't also get over top of this wall because despite the wall looking very low, it's actually this tall up, and he's colliding with the very top of it there. He also doesn't get bored and start randomly shooting skulls all over the place because he's trying to shoot this chicken here, which is the closest thing. It's always good to keep the target that the wither is going after in the same chunk so they get loaded exactly at the same time. He's actually seeing it with his eyes, and if we spectate him, we can see what he sees. You can barely see the chicken across the water over there. And the wither eyes is this little red line here. Since he can see the chicken, he goes ahead and tries to shoot a wither skull directly at it. 1 comes from his main head and 2 come from the side heads. The side heads just collide with these iron trap doors right here. And since they're always black wither skulls, they can never destroy the iron. Where the main head can actually make its way all the way to the chicken, possibly at least. But we got some bubble columns in here, which are pushing the wither skull upwards. You can see it actually gets mostly in there, and all of a sudden it kind of gets lifted up again. But as soon as it gets lifted, it still wants to continue going that direction. So it ends up going all the way down and over. But you can see it actually misses the chicken, which is kind of funny. But there is a rare chance that the main head, since it can see the target directly, will not only shoot out a black one. The black skulls don't actually do any damage to stuff with high blast resistance like Einstone. One's about to shoot off a blue wither skull, and you can see over time it has been kind of eating this hole into the ground. I've had it running for like 3 hours now, so it didn't eat too much, but eventually it would probably eat all the way down to bedrock, but it can't actually break bedrock. Otherwise the skull would just go down into the void and despawn. Now, if you did want to make this into a stable wither cage, you would have to make sure that none of these little blocks ever get hit by the blue wither skulls, because they would just end up breaking them anyways. So it's best just to remove them in the first place. And then now you can kind of see what you would need in order to make a stable wither cage. It also looks pretty terrible for whoever's standing over there. Just a bunch of random wither skulls hitting all over the place. The black ones, you don't have to really worry about them because they're never going to create any more damage on the end stone. But just that one there would eventually create a small hole. You also don't want stuff to mess up your farm, so I went ahead and placed some torch and carpets to prevent endermen from actually teleporting to this block. They can actually teleport to the edge of a block since there's a little bit of room for them there. This way they can't. Now, the pitcher plant going lower is intended, but the way they'll probably fix this is they'll just make it so that when you do break this block, it'll just update the plant and break it as well. This would be a bit unfortunate because when it comes to putting these plants in builds, it looks really cool when you remove like that block and put in something more like dirt or whatever you're building with. But pitcher plants aren't the only unique hitbox. We also got the sniffer egg, which is 1 pixel smaller on this side and 2 pixels smaller on this side, which is quite unique. Something like the dragon egg is 1 pixel smaller, so the sniffer is same as that when it comes to one side, but on the other side, it's actually a little bit different and it is the same as the anvils. The hanging sign was also 1.20 and is thinner than a trapdoor. You can see the trapdoor here is 3 pixels and this is only 2 pixels. So it gives another unique hitbox which you can use to kind of hold entities in place. Some other 1.20 blocks that have non-full hitboxes are like the decorative pod, which is the same as like the chest. And I did talk about the piglin head in the past, but they did fix it a little bit. You can now see it's actually a square instead of being uneven on one side. So when faced forward on a wall, it's the same as other mob heads. But if placed in the center of a block, it's actually unique, as well as if you turn it sideways and place it on the wall. If I use a Mega Fortune tool on them, you can see that we don't actually get any more items. If it's not fully grown, we just get the pod. Otherwise, we get the pitcher plant item. Now, Silk Touch also doesn't let you get the actual blocks. So you can't just get this like cool looking part plant, part root. And instead have to start over with the small one and just hope you grow it up to the size you want. Now when it comes to the smaller of the 4 sizes, you can place string over top of these to prevent them from continuing to grow. So you can kind of keep those in that form if you want a special hitbox or just a special look like some kind of rooted vegetable in your garden. But the smallest size would still be able to grow up to this size. But this other size will continue to grow into it fully grown. Now the sniffer egg, you can just use your hand to break it down. So you don't need like Silk Touch, and Fortune doesn't do anything. Downside to the pitcher pod is when it's planted on farmland, it doesn't actually think it's actual crop. And therefore, if the farmland updates and dries out, it just pops it off. Unless it's fully grown, you can see, then it can convert and be just fine. So this doesn't actually affect the torch flower. As you can see, it doesn't pop off, but it also doesn't keep the farmland unless it's one of the smaller variants. The small torch flower isn't considered a flower, but the big one is. But when it comes to the pitcher plant, it's not considered a flower. When you first plant in a torch flower seed, the seed is centered, but when you grow it up, once it's completely grown, it then will place the flower in a similar location within the block that would place like other grass and flower types. In this case, it's off to the side. So also when the flower jumps to the corner, both the pod and the plant can work in composters. When it comes to fire, we can't actually set fire to any of these. And you can't detect the different stages of these using comparators. You can't actually cook up the sniffer egg. And eggs also pop off cactus. Now, despite their collision, you can actually place cactus up against them, which is quite unusual because pretty much anything that has collision will pop off a cactus. With a few exceptions is like the collision that you get from powder snow when wearing leather boots, as well as a bunch of snow layers, which actually does make a block. Otherwise, something as simple as like a no colliding sign will destroy it. Now, you can't place any like signs, paintings, or item frames up against this, which is a little bit unusual because there is a block that collides with, and you can pretty much place item frames against any side of any object. But like here, this fence actually bulges up, so I can't place one on top of it. But if I open it, it's no longer colliding, and then I can actually place an item frame above it. And that's probably why you can't place it underneath of this. The pitcher plant nor the sniffer egg put off light, but neither does the new torch flower. But the torch flower doesn't get its name because it puts off light, but instead it kind of looks like a torch, being part of a family of flowers with similar characteristics. Now you currently can't use the pitcher plant for like suspicious stew or feed them to a brown mushroom, unlike what you can do with the torch flower. When updating our testing world, we noticed that our Gordy, who has enchanted shield and pumpkin head, is extra shiny from the old version. When I placed on a new one, it doesn't look as shiny. This is insanely shiny. With the new sniffer eggs, you can actually push them with pistons, and when they push, they all put off particles. They can also get pulled with pistons. They don't actually need any blocks underneath them to support them. They can't be moved with pistons as they just break and drop their items. When it comes to water, it actually will pop off the sniffer egg as well as the plants. Now the pitchers can't be waterlogged, but oddly enough, not only can you not waterlog a sniffer egg, but you cannot actually place it into water and have it replace the water either. You just can't click at all. The pitcher can only be placed on dirt-like blocks where the egg can be placed on anything. You can use a debug stick on it to get some funny looking plants. You get some different bottom pieces. This is the normal one. You can also remove the top. It's like invisible. There's no top there at all. Or you can put in some smaller ones. So it looks like the top actually has different ages. So 0 through 2 does nothing. There's 3 and there's 4, which is kind of strange because there is no top half to these small ones. So these are called pitcher crop, or these are called pitcher plant. And if you use the debug stick on these, you can get 2 flower pieces. Or you can even put the bottom piece on top and vice versa. You can also use this to change the age of the sniffer egg. What happens when we blow the egg up with TNT? Oh, looks like they just drop, and it's not too blast resistant. Now when it comes to the two-sided signs, you do have to use glow ink on both sides if you want that, as well as using dye on either side. But when it comes to the honeycomb, it only takes one, and that will actually do both sides. But it does mean every sign that you do have currently in the game, if you don't want someone to edit it, you will have to come in with a lot of honeycomb and be sure to wax them all. So if you do need a lot of it, check out this farm here where you can get a lot of it easily. Now the calibrated sculk sensor is just the same as the sculk sensor when it comes to its size and being able to break it easily with like a hoe and stuff like that. And the suspicious gravel has the same properties as like suspicious sand. Now when it comes to the trail runes, you normally only see the very tip of them sticking out of the ground, but you can see there's actually a whole bunch of the structure hidden underneath of the ground. So there's this main structure here, but then there's a bunch of houses and pathways. And each structure has a little bit of variety. Let's clean up one of these structures and see what else we can find. So I cleaned up all the structures, removing the dirt, gravel, and sand, and you can see they look more like a normal structure. Like this was a tower. When you go inside of it, there was a room off to this side over here. And on the opposite side, there was also another room. Seems like there's even a ladder here that probably takes you up the top of it. Then outside of it, there's a pathway that goes along where there's a bunch of other houses. Houses are pretty tattered, but you can see there's rooms with inside of them. A couple noticeable things are like this little sphinx looking statue. This building even has a bunch of workstations, including a smithing table, cauldron, stone cutter, with 2 different types of furnaces. And a lot of parts have stairs which take you down to lower levels. So the reason they put these structures in is to create more lore in Minecraft. So when people come across them, they can try to think, what kind of civilization lived here? Why do they make these crazy colored buildings? And what were they doing with these different rooms? This all goes into the Tales and Trails part of the update. More crazy stuff in a future video, so stay tuned. In the meanwhile, I'll start building my simple 1.20 farm, so you can be ready for the update using this playlist here, or this one about real glitches I found over the years of playing the game. Thanks to my supporters on Patreon, Discord subscribers, and Twitch subs. These videos are only possible with your guys' support, but don't fear, you can support me for free just by sharing what I do with other Minecrafters, and crediting Ray's works. Bye bye!